Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it finds you well. My name is John, and I am an author, and I am here for another Storytime Thursday where I'm going to be reading chapter 2 of my first book, The Shadow of the Past, that is available on Amazon. Link below. Please check it out. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Chapter 2, The Deep Woods. Valinar stood upon a dark plain on a moonless night that made the long grass around him appear almost gray in the starlight. Away to his left, some miles distant, rose a string of mountains, deep gray at the bottom going up to snowy tops. To his right, the plain went on as far as he could see, the grass rustling softly in the gentle night breeze. His eyes kept being drawn to the air directly in front of him. There was a faint shimmering above a peculiar mark, almost like a scar in the earth. He was unable to tell what it was, but there was definitely something wrong about this spot. Yet, no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't put a figure on what it was. He had to be missing something. Valinar woke in his bed. It had been the same every night for the past 2 weeks. A plane he had never seen before with a strange mark and the unshakable feeling of wrongness. He had been seeing it in his sleep ever since he had been knocked unconscious by Ushara. The prophetess left early the following morning, and as far as Valinar could gather, hadn't harmed or threatened any other person in the city. He had even asked the seasonal traders when they had come in a week and a half later if they had heard of her or the Union. They said that as far as they knew, the Union treated its neighbors very well, although they had been involved in an almost unbroken series of wars since its formation. The traders had not heard anything save the highest praise for Ushara. They did admit, however, that they had little interest in that far corner of the Terra the Telmaran Union resided in. Valinar's father was growing annoyed at this constant line of questioning. He kept what happened in his room a secret, both because no one would have believed him, and it would have highly likely brought down his father's wrath to find out he had attempted to attack an honored guest, despite how futile the endeavor ended up being. Though he hardly ever socialized with the other elves before the arrival of Ushara, Valinar was now even more reclusive. Most of his time was spent in his rooms or wandering the forest alone, and of what he told no one. He was striving harder and harder to find the nature of the malevolence that lay below the normal threads of Ere. It was almost just beyond his reach. Whenever he would get closer, it seemed to move just slightly to avoid his touch. Anytime he did get close, he received a vision of destruction or the mysterious plane, and once he got a brief glimpse of a massive tower piercing the clouds. As these visions kept coming to him, and as he dwelt more and more on what Ushara had said and what the connection might be, he began to entertain the idea of going out beyond the borders of Toranu to discover what exactly was going on in the wide world. As a result, began to make secret preparations for what he would need in order to make such a journey. As he was making these preparations, other thoughts kept coming into his mind, such as the fact that he had no idea where to go, what to look for, and what to do when he found it. His knowledge of the outside world was narrow, coming entirely from what he could get out of the traders and the rare emissary that came to the Torano elves. He could consult none of his own people on the matter because his knowledge was already more extensive on the subject than the entire city, and any books or scrolls were decades, if not centuries, out of date. What is more, any elf in the forest would have thought him insane to go beyond the borders of the forest, something no one had done since the Wars of the Dark Elves. Unlike most elves, it was not the leaving itself that worried him, for he was far less attached to the forest than any of his brethren, but the dangers he would find beyond the forest borders. His other worry was discovery once he left the forest. Because of her decidedly clear threat, he knew that if she got even the slightest hint that he had set off looking for answers, she would make every possible effort to have him dealt with, in all likely terminally. He was therefore hoping to get at least some distance from the forest and find something to start with before she found out his intent. As had become his routine ever since he had first had visions of what may be, he arose from bed and dressed in preparation of taking a walk. After pulling the green tunic over his head and fastening the brown cloak about his neck, he picked up his selkir in its sheath and fastened it slantways across his chest so that the weapon was upon his back. The selkir was a doubly rare weapon in that it was one of the only swords to be found in the entire forest, his brethren being, in general, more disposed towards wood-crafted weapons, since they had little supply of metal, and that it had been forged by Valinar. One of the city's few smiths had taught him how such a weapon would be made, but neither Valinor nor the smith could explain the magecraft he had almost unconsciously forged into the weapon. Almost as an afterthought before he pulled on his pair of rarely used boots before leaving his chamber. The Taranu elves normally went either barefoot or with only light cloth shoes unless they were hunting or going somewhere dangerous. As he walked down the wooden path that curved down the Etru trees, he began to get the strangest urge to travel, not out, but rather deep into the heart of the forest, something the elves did rarely even in large groups in recent years, and that he needed to do so alone. It was only being stopped by the guards, another event that was fast becoming routine, which shook him from his internal pondering. My lord, why must you keep disobeying the wishes of your father? Inquired the guard standing on his right. He sent down orders that none were to leave Garatha on their own, for any reason, not even you. I desire to walk into the woods in order to clear my head, was Valinar's reply. Is there something wrong with that? No, there is nothing wrong with it. It's just that you really shouldn't go on your own, said the guard on the left. Could you please just bring someone with you while you clear your head? Valinar gave the guard an annoyed look. How can I clear my head if there is someone with me? The whole idea of going out in Toronto to clear my head is to be alone. Could you be alone in your room? Asked the guard on the right. Then, after seeing Valinar's facial expression, he added with a gulp, My lord. Valinar sighed. No, I couldn't, because would still be able to hear all the goings on of Garatha, and that wouldn't help me clear my head. Now, as I fully intend to go into the woods, are you really going to stop me, orders or no? Both guards reluctantly made to step aside, but Valinar had only taken one step before the right guard interrupted his progress once more. My lord, why do you carry your selkir with you and have boots upon your feet? Valinar thought about this for a moment, and being just as confused about their presence as the guards, decided to respond, I feel I may need them. Which was true, he did feel he was going to need them, but he was wholly unsure as to why. Where are you intending on going in the woods that you feel you may need a weapon and a pair of boots? Inquired the left guard. The answer which issued from Valinar's mouth surprised even him. I am going into the heart of the woods. He had no idea where the words had come from or even what compelled him to say it aloud, but nevertheless that was where some part of him was resolved upon going. Both guards looked aghast at this. It was the left guard that found his voice first. My lord, that is suicide. Many dangerous beasts reside in the deep woods that even a party of hunters would not dare face. And you propose to go in there alone? Why are you doing such a thing? Valinar thought about this, and once more the answer came back to him much faster than he expected. Because I have many questions, and it is there I shall find some answers. The right guard took a deep breath as if steeling himself for something before he addressed Valinar again. My lord, as much as I respect you, what you're doing is crazy, and your father would certainly forbid it if he knew what you were planning. I am sorry, but I am going to have to ask you to turn back. If you do not comply, we will be forced to restrain you. Both guards raised their staves and took steps toward Valinar. He could see the soft green glow around their hands, telling Valinar that they were both weaving spells of strength and defense around themselves. Valinar paused for a moment in thought before deciding on his course of action. He sighed deeply before addressing the guards. In that case, I am sorry as well. With speed that surprised both guards, Valinar grabbed and twisted the stave out of the left guard's hands and cast it aside as he ducked the blow of the right guard aimed at his head. With a swipe of his arm, he disarmed the right guard while the left guard grabbed his left arm in an attempt to restrain him. Valinar delivered a blow to the left guard's chest with the palm of his hand that lifted the guard off his feet and landed him on his back as the right guard attempted to subdue Valinar by his shoulders. Valinar pivoted to his left, elbowed the guard in the stomach, and backhanded him in the face, which knocked him over. Concentrating, he waved his left hand, emitting a faint green light over both guards. Both guards tried to rise only to find their legs bound by roots that had just burst from the ground. Valinar took a dozen steps before the left guard managed to rise. Realizing that the guards had unraveled his spell faster than he had wanted, he turned again and concentrated on the pattern of the spell that Ushara had used on him 2 weeks previously. Once he had the pattern in his head, he raised his right hand. It radiated purple light for a brief moment, and both guards crumpled to the forest floor, unconscious. Valadar turned sharply and ran in the direction of the deep woods and did not slow until he was some distance from Karatha. He thought it unlikely that the elders would risk guards or a hunting party to find one who was foolishly heading into such a dangerous part of the forest. It was also unlikely that the guards were conscious yet, as they would not have woken on their own, and Valinar doubted whether there was any among Gyrotha who could undo such magic quickly, as it was an area outside their chosen knowledge. Nevertheless, he kept up a brisk pace for the better part of the day. As he progressed deeper into the forest, the other trees grew larger and more twisted, and the undergrowth grew thicker. It would begin to significantly slow his progress sometime the next day or so, he guessed. As each hour progressed, the air around him grew thicker and was filled with many pungent odors of plants and beasts that were rarely, if at all, seen by the elves living near the forest edge. Valinar also sensed the area of earth, green and vibrant like a young tree, growing more dominant as he passed deeper into the forest. By the time he stopped to rest with the setting of the sun, the earth area was so dominant that it took concentration to find any of the other strands, although they had not diminished in their own strength. Toranu was an ancient forest, one that was already old when the current tribe of elves had come to make their residence, an event which had occurred many thousands of years previously. It was so steeped in array and ancient spells that it repelled even the elves, bound as they were to the forest from its interior. He took several hours of rest, more to think than anything, before setting off again still deeper into the forest. He realized that he was now well beyond the point where any of his people would follow him for fear of the beasts and enchantment which populated the forest heart. Now that his mind came to the topic, Valinar found it quite odd that he had seen no beasts of any kind since he started out the previous morning, and none of the strange spells which he had heard tale of. He had heard and felt their presence at a distance all day, but none passed within his sight. On several occasions, he even detected a sudden change of direction, as if the animals were deliberately moving to avoid him. There was, in fact, nothing about this journey into the forest heart which made any form of sense to Valinar. The more he thought about it, the more he was quite sure the idea had been placed in his head. It was as if some force other than his own desires were pulling him deeper into the forest, and whatever this force was, it also seemed to be ensuring that he reached whatever destination he was being drawn to intact. It was not till the following afternoon that his suspicions of a force guiding him into the forest were confirmed. As he had anticipated, the undergrowth continued to grow thicker as he progressed, but just as it was about to hamper the progress of even his sure feet, a path through the undergrowth opened up before him. It was just wide enough for him to pass through without brushing any of the plants on either side, and when he looked behind him, the path seemed to be gone again. Part of Valinar wondered if this was some ancient spell weaving a trap for him, but the path kept on straight to the very center, so far as he could tell. In frustration at being so led by some external will, Valinar muttered, "What do you want with me? Why am I being guided into the forest heart?" "For help." Valinar had made the inquiry out of frustration, so was stopped in his tracks by the sheer surprise at the faint reply. He didn't so much hear it as feel it within himself. After he had regained some composure, he once more spoke, this time out loud. "For help to be rendered, or for help to be given?" "Both." After pondering this cryptic response for a short time, Valinar responded, "Where is it I am being led?" "To the center." "Is that far?" "2 days at your current pace." "How do I know this is not some trap?" "Have I not held the beasts back? Have I not bent the ancient enchantments of the forest out of your way?" "You have, but that does not answer my question." "You are slow to trust, Highborn. A wise trait." "You are the second to call me highborn in recent weeks. Why do you call me this?" "I address you as nothing but what you are." "Might you not have me confused with another? I am Valinar, son of Tharas, a forest elf." "I know exactly who you are, Valinar, son of Yanir." "I just said I was the son of Tharas. What is going—" "Enough talk. It shall be explained to you when we meet in person. Make all haste. You have my word that no harm will come to you from me." Leaving Valinar confused, the presence that had been speaking to him through the earth area departed. After pondering the being's words for a few moments, he decided there was nothing to do but meet the entity face to face, and set off at the same brisk pace he had kept up all the previous day. He kept the pace through the fading of that day, despite a brisk spring rain, all the next, and the rising of the following morning, pausing only twice at streams to get a drink of water and to relieve himself. Since the path was laid out before him, he could devote his whole mind to the things the presence had said to him. Was he really not the son of Tharas? It would certainly explain much. From his very early life, Valinar had realized that he was different from his elven brethren. He had been given the epithet early in his life, Yersu, meaning strange one. In physical shape, he appeared more like a human, although his features and ability were unquestionably elven. He was faster and more agile than any in the tribe, and was stronger as well. He proved himself from a young age incredibly proficient with all manner of arms, both melee and ranged, and as his senses were unusually keen. But after handling one carried by a merchant, the sword became his weapon of choice. The rest of the tribe mainly used wooden weapons aside from knives and spearheads, so it was a shock to them that he had made the Selkir, an elvish longsword known only in the wisdom of the few blacksmiths, which was now upon his back. It was, however, his skill in the weaving of spells which astounded, and he suspected frightened his fellow elves. All the other elves could only effectively weave magic with the earth array, barely able to even detect the presence of others, and only had limited knowledge and skills of non elemental magic. He could use all six array with equal proficiency and had no small skill in non elemental spell weaving as well. These skills seemed to come intuitively and with little practice, and though still young for an elf, both his raw power and his spell weaving skill were far beyond that of any elf in the forest. With these thoughts and many others racing through his head, Valinar came at last, at midday of his fourth of traveling, to the heart of the forest. Valinar passed through a gap between two massive etru trees, and rather than more thick forest, he found himself standing at the edge of a wide meadow surrounded by on all sides by the largest trees he had ever seen. At the center of the rolling meadow was a massive knot of trees of a type Valinar had never seen before, and they were joined together in a way that suggested the castles he had heard traders describing. As he approached, he could see at the center of the trees a wooden throne upon a raised dais. It was apparent that it had been a great count of years since any had sat upon the throne, but some spell or skill of craft kept it undecayed by the march of time. As he came under this knot of trees, he could see that the throne was intricately carved with images of many types of plants, with two trees, an etru and the type he didn't recognize dominating the back of the chair, larger than all the rest. Around the rim of the throne were carved runic letters, clearly elvish but of no type that Valinar had set eyes upon. To his further surprise, an understanding of the words sprang suddenly to his mind. It said, "Here within this meadow, fair upon this carved throne, sits our wooded lord, who has mastered beast and tree." As Valinar marveled at his understanding of the runes, he became aware of an approaching light. As it came through the trees, he could see that the light had no origin or form, to it, but simply floated through the air, green and vibrant. It came within feet of Valinar before addressing him. Greetings, Valinar, son of Yanira. Welcome to the heart of Taranu, or, as it was called long ago, Hyara, the Wooden Citadel, said the entity, pulsing slightly with every word spoken. This was once the seat of power for the Defal Forest Elf Kingdom that ruled this forest. The elves of Gyrotha are the distant cousins of that tribe and possess a mere shadow of the power of the Forest King and his people did before their fall. It waited for a long moment before speaking further. It seems my appearance makes you uneasy. Perhaps you would prefer this. As he said this, there was a groaning sound and a number of roots shot up from the ground and twisted themselves around the light. The process took several minutes, but the finished product looked like a wood carving of an elf. It even had a mouth and hollow eyes and vines in the place of hair. Once the process was completed, the likeness suddenly looked up and with effort detached itself from the ground so it could walk freely. When it spoke, its voice was deep and sounded like the groaning of a great tree in the wind. This is the semblance of how I once appeared. I am Meramas. After saying this, he bowed stiffly. Valinar returned the gesture before inquiring, "As you once appeared?" Yes, long ago my true body was destroyed. It lay there, he said, indicating a high mound beyond the strange tree to his right. But the works of time but the work of time has been done, and it has been dust for thousands of years. Then how are you still alive? Valinar inquired, adding, "If you are still alive." At this, the semblance seemed to smile. I still live in a sense. So strongly was I connected to the earth area of this terror that my spirit survived my body's destruction. Is that connection how you were able to keep the beasts at bay and make a path for me through the forest? Yes, the connection goes both ways. While my spirit exists, I have power over the earth area across this terra. Or at least I did. Did? Has some force robbed you of your power? Yes, Maramas responded with what seemed like some hesitation. Which is the reason I called you here. My mind could once gather news from across the Terra, but my reach has been diminished. Now I barely had strength enough to even implant the idea of coming here into your mind. A malevolence has appeared within the area. From whence it came I am not certain, and I do not have the power to find it. Recently I have begun to sense this malevolence beneath the threads of Ere. What other effect is it having? I think its primary goal is to weaken all the peoples of this terra and making them more combative with each other. This cannot be a random event or force of nature, said Valinar, thinking out loud. There is a guiding will behind this, which seeks to weaken resistance to whatever it is planning. The semblance smiled again. Well done. You are indeed what I hoped you would be. There is definitely a vile will behind this. Have you any idea who or what the origin of this will could be? Inquired the elf. The semblance paused before answering. I have a thought as to its origin, but I will not reveal it, for I hope that I am wrong. The origin is unimportant for the time being, which is what is more important is discovering what it is planning. I believe you have already met one of its agents. Do you refer to Ushara the prophetess? Yes, I do not know exactly what she is planning or what her purpose her union is meant to serve, but it is beyond question that she is a puppet or an ally of whatever will controls the malevolence. She seeks to weaken the resistance of the people of Sirana to whatever is coming, or else use the weakness brought by internal strife to grow her union's power. Members of her union can be controlled by the army she is building and the laws that go with membership, and any land that does not join can be crushed by the same army. Her plans already seem so far along. What can be done against her? Her plans are very are far along, but she is playing a very dangerous game, remarked Maramas. I doubt it is the whole of it, but the key part of whatever her plans are is this union that I've heard rumblings in the earth about. The way she described it to your council tells me stopping this union may be the key to stopping her. Valinar looked incredulous. How could an entire nation, let alone an alliance of nations, be stopped? Meramas nodded his head. They are strong, and Ushara wished them to seem untouchable when she described it to the elves, but it is not without its weaknesses that may be exploited. That would still be difficult to accomplish. Yes, but what I am saying is that her plans are not infallible, especially since there is a force at play that she has not counted on. What is that? Asked Valinar, genuinely puzzled. There was a pulsating sound that sounded almost like a chuckle. You are what she has not counted on. She did not know until she met you that any of the Highborn still lived. Valinar, utterly perplexed, said, But what could I do against her, as she has already proven she is far stronger than I? I spoke not of facing her directly. She is far more powerful than you and vastly skilled. However, it is beyond question that you, though you are far less than your highborn forefathers, are by far the greatest threat to her plans that exists upon this terra. You keep calling me highborn, said Valinar with rising annoyance. Why? Haven't you figured it out yet? Maramas inquired. Have you never wondered why you are so much the greater of the forest elves you live with? Ever wondered why you have abilities the others do not? Like the understanding of languages, written or spoken? You are, to use the proper name for your people, a Se'era-Efen. That cannot be possible. It is, nodded Meramas. You are connected with all six of the Era equally. You are the last elf of balance to walk this terra. That is why I call you Highborn. I have never heard the name before in our old histories. I have heard the name before in our old histories, but none given much information. So, Meramas, I ask you to speak plainly. What is a Se Era Elfen? As you well know, elves have a strong connection with the Ere. Most elven tribes will, over time, build up a connection to one type of Ere, or a specific combination, to the point where they become almost unable to do magic in any other element, and become shaped by that element. Occasionally, a group of elves will embrace all the elements equally, and be equally skilled at all forms of magic. This balance of ere prevents the attributes of any one element from dominating, which is why you appear so different from those you live with and are so much more powerful. But how could I be an elf of balance if I am the son of Theras, a forest elf? Although it is not impossible for a balance elf to be born to an elemental tribe, you are not the son of Theras. You are the son of Yanira. How then did I come among these forest elves and call Theras my father? That is something which you will have to ask Ha'atha Theras when you return to Garatha. Now we have other things to discuss. Valinar nodded his assent to this and said, You said that we could help each other, and you have given me answers and information. What help do you desire of me? I cannot go beyond the confines of this forest. My power has become too weak, and I am not sure it is my place to do so, regardless. You must go beyond the forest and discover exactly what Ushara is planning and stop it by any means that you are able. You have given me information to start with, but where should I go? How should I begin? You must trace the footsteps of this prophetess and discover the nature of what she is doing. My first piece of advice that is, unless you are sure of your audience, do not openly denounce Ushara. Instead, undermine her plan and counsels in any way you can. Second, while you will attract attention wherever you go, seek no more attention than you need to succeed. Finally, I would try to undermine this Telmaran union first. See if you can find a few weak points. If you can dismantle it, or better yet, turn it against Ushara, we will have won a victory, and in the process, you may learn what the rest of her or her master's plan entails. Once she realizes what I'm doing, she will make every attempt to stop me. She will undoubtedly try to kill you, but it is likely that she will ever seek you out personally. If I am such a threat to her, why wouldn't she seek to eliminate me, especially since I am no match for her power or skill? Asked Valinar. True, but she will not seek out confrontation. Never mind why, just know that she will not. Be careful of her nonetheless should you ever cross paths again. It matters not, she likely has many agents and servants who can be sent to kill me. Then you must be ever vigilant on your journey, Marimas responded with a sigh. There is some aid that I can give you, however, and a second task I must lay on you. There are others like me. Find them and tell them everything that you have learned. They will give you other aid as well as knowledge and insights of their own. There are others like you, said Valinar in surprise. Long ago, I and my companions invoked an ancient magic which bound each of us to our chosen elements. Like me, their bodies have been overcome, but their spirits endured. They have power over their chosen element, though it is likely that their powers are as weak as mine. Where can I find them? We rarely had need to contact each other before the coming of this malevolence, and now, with my power diminished, I cannot be sure of their locations, replied Marimas with a touch of sadness. However, the Lady of Fire has long dwelt in the Orthus Mountains. I would search for her first. She might be able to tell you where the Ladies of Water and Light and the Lords of Air and Darkness can be found. Very well. After I have collected provisions at Gyroth, I will head north towards the mountains. On my way, I can stop at the human city of Fetra for news. I am told that Cameral is on the verge of joining the Union, so hopefully I will be able to find out more about this Telmaran Union once I reach the city. If I am not mistaken, there is a dwarven and a goblin realm in those mountains. Perhaps they can be persuaded to aid me as well. A wise course of action. There is little other information I can give you, although there are two gifts which I can bestow upon you. Saying this, he walked a short distance behind the throne and came to a chest, which he opened and pulled out a pair of arm guards made of stiff leather and three overlapping metal strips, each coming to a sharp point and made of a dark bronze-colored metal Valinar was unfamiliar with. These are merit arm guards once worn by the Forest King. They are made of Irtak metal and guller hides and laced with many protective enchantments. Powerful indeed would be the weapon that could pierce the leather, let alone the metal. The overlapping plates make them usable as a weapon in a hand fighting, and they also have strength spells on them which should increase your strength beyond that which even most humans could boast of. Valinar took the guards and admired their craftsmanship for a short time before slipping them on his arms and lacing them up. They fit well, and he could already feel the enchantment of strength taking effect upon him. When this was done, Marimas addressed Valinar once more. The other gift which I can give you is an increase in your power and skill in Earthere. As I said, you are far less powerful than your highborn forefathers, but in the realm of earth magic I can bring you much closer to that old power. With that, he raised his right hand, and a jet of green light shot from his palm and hit Valinar in the chest. He felt the power of the earth area growing stronger within him. His whole body felt as though roots and leaves and branches were growing from his very limbs in a way that was both painful and exhilarating. His body writhed in pain as his mind soared through the deep roots of the trees and reveled in its newfound power. At last the feeling passed, and he was able to rise to his feet again. He was speechless with the new sensations that were coursing through him. It was as if the whole forest and the earth itself were far more alive than they had ever been before. When at last he was able to speak again, he said, I thank you deeply, Marimas. You have given me gifts which I cannot possibly thank you for, and you have given me what I need to start out on a journey that might prove the salvation or ruin of all Sirana. Now it is time I set off for Gyrotha. It is already getting toward evening, and I have a 4-day journey ahead of me. I can speed your return, said the semblance, beckoning towards the outer trees, as a great philtar, a tan-hoofed animal, with a long thrashing tail and long straight horns, trotted into the meadow. He will carry you back to your village in less than a day. Go with hope, Valinar. All is not lost yet. With that, Valinar walked over to the philtar, which stayed perfectly still and leapt onto its back. As the beast began to walk toward the wooded barrier, Valinar looked back and saw the semblance of Maramas slowly coming apart and returning to the ground, and he called back to it, Farewell, I will do all I can, and thank you. As soon as the philtar reached the Etru trees, it took off like a tan streak through the path that opened through the trees. As the forest went zipping past him, he reflected upon all that he had learned and all that he had to do. A great task had been placed upon him, with much riding on its outcome, but Valinar could not help but feel the thrill of excitement of going beyond Turanu, which he had longed to do for many years. He also reflected that at last he knew why he was different from the other elves, though he brooded on what his questioning of Thoros would reveal about the matter. For the moment, however, he began to plan what he needed to bring and where he was going. On the return trip, he paid no more attention to his surroundings than he had on his journey to the interior, but this time his enhanced power allowed him to sense much more than he ever had of the forest around him. Once he was tired of thinking and planning, he allowed his mind to sink deeply into the earth area and enjoy all the new sensations he felt as the forest rushed past him and began to thin. He could sense Garatha long before he was near it, and he dismounted the Philtar just beyond sight of it. As the great beast turned to sprint off to its deep home deep within the forest, Valinar felt one final message from Maramas. Farewell, and go with hope. That is chapter 2 of The Shadow of the Past. Once more, that is available on Amazon. Link is below, as is my second book, The Shadow of the Past, also linked below and available on Amazon. I would love for you to check it out. Please, if you have any thoughts on either the content of the chapter itself or my reading, have any other suggestions or anything else, please do let me know. I would love to hear them and hear your feedback as well. Other than comments and feedback, and hopefully taking an interest in buying my book, please like, share, subscribe. That would all be fantastic and would really appreciate it. And there's some links to my website and socials below. I got there in the end. I hope you all have a fantastic day and have the opportunity to do something creative. And I'll catch you on the next one.